Welcome, everybody. It is Friday, August 11th, 2023. Yep. Yeah, August is the best month of the year, in case anybody didn't know that, as I know a lot of people with birthdays in this month, family, friends, whatever. But it's a great birthday month, but it's a great month too. And here is today, episode 270 of Real Estate Talk TGIF. And this is 267 weeks in a row. We're honored to have a new friend of mine, Wally Bressler, who is the founder and owner of Trigger Sales Systems, triggersalessystems.com. Wally's been in the real estate industry for 25 years and more, and has lots of personal and entrepreneurial experience, but he helps people build new habits and with lots of different ways. And we're going to get into that today. Wally, thanks so much for coming on today. Can't wait to get started.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm a big fan of 270. That's right around my my playing weight when I played football in college. So it's a good number for me.
Awesome. Great. Hey, Nelson, hit the video. Real estate agents, are you looking to acquire clients consistently to grow your business and income for a great lifestyle? Well, this is Dave Finale, and I'm here to bring you the Real Estate Skill Builder broadcast, Real Estate Talk TGIF, brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder and the Modern Agent team. Hello, and we're back here, and we're talking about Trigger Sales Systems. We're talking about life. We're talking about building our business. As we always do, the idea here is to give back to the real estate industry and community through what I do at Real Estate Skill Builder and through the Modern Agent team and group here in Northern New Jersey with the Modern Agents, helping people grow their business. We do that every day, but on Wednesdays, we invite all of you, anyone that wants to join us in person in our workspace in Teaneck, New Jersey, where we help agents set appointments. And our average lately has been 1.8 appointments per agent per session. Hey, man, check us out, modernagentexperience.com. And here we are with episode 270 of Real Estate Talk TGIF with Wally Bressler. Welcome, man.
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you, man. Good to be here. Thanks. I'm honored. I know you've had some incredible people on your show, so this is definitely a big deal for me for sure. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome, man. I'm going to start it like I start every broadcast with one simple question. What does TGIF stand for?
What does TGIF stand for? Oh my God. It's funny for me. It's funny because when you get into the real estate business and when you own your own company, sometimes the F just goes away, right? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You're working, 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, trying to build your brand. So, but I do have to say that at least it signals for me the fact where I have more time to myself, if that makes sense, more time to work on things, on my business time rather than in my business time. So, for me, thank God it's Friday, and this, at least in this respect, means I get a little time to step back a little bit, spend some time with my kids, chill, do some reading. I'm still working on things, but I'm not, call after call after call after call, podcast, 12 hours a day like I normally am. So it's definitely a break mentally and emotionally for me for sure.
Yeah, I get that. And a lot of people, similarly, it's a break for most people. But I want to tell you that TGIF has a special meaning to this broadcast. And really, it's simple. It means, thank God it's finale. So I just want to put that out there.
As it should be. What was I thinking? How dare I not
well,
say
that's
that?
Okay, man. I mean, I love what you had to say. I mean, it's time for a break. Look, everybody says, well, thank God it's Friday. Someone said that to me at the gym this morning. And my usual response is, well, I'm in real estate.
Yeah.
What does it mean? For me, it means during the summer, for me, it means that tomorrow I play golf. So, anyway, here we are. So enough of the small talk. Let's get into the brass of Wally Bressler, Trigger Sales Systems. But first, talk to me about your journey, your path. I mean, it's interesting, and and you're very open about it. And that's one thing that I've been able to do really well here, is to have people really talk about what they've gone through to get where they are today. I mean, your system is amazing. I mean, we've had conversations about it. We were put together by the great
Grant.
Personal friend and coach of mine, Grant Wise.
Yes.
So talk to me about you and where you've been and what you've gone through to get where you are.
Wow. I don't know who it was. Is this amazing sales trainer personal development guy. I think he was in the Marines, but bushy hair, beard. I saw him speaking one time, and he said something very interesting. He said, he says, if you go through the right amount of trauma as a child, if you have the right amount of challenges as a child, it will usually spur you on to amazing things when you get older, right? I had a lot of trauma as a child, so I didn't get the right amount. I probably got the way more amount, but it is what has served me to make the changes in my life and help people make changes in their lives over time. You're Italian. We talked about this. I grew up in an Italian family. There's three types of communication when an Italian family. When you're a kid, you get food, you get hit, and you get yelled at. You know what I'm saying? And then food is sometimes a weapon, and sometimes it's a reward. And so my parents, my mother's name was Engati, my father's mother's name was Russo. My whole family's from Brooklyn and Queens, and so it's one of these things where neither of my parents, had great upbringings. My dad's mom was especially mean woman, not really nice at all. So, I got from my dad, mostly my dad, my mom too, what they got. So, for me, 4, 5, 6 years old, you do something wrong, you get punished. One of your punishments is to be sent to bed without dinner,
Right.
And so,
right.
and so that sparked in me a huge fear of being hungry, and battled a binge eating disorder for the better part of 50 years as a result of that. Huge addiction to food. My weight got up to almost 500 pounds at one time. So it was pretty bad. And then, I was sexually abused when I was 10. I started looking at pornography when I was 11. I started engaging in sexual activity, right at between 11 and 12. And I was bullied for mercilessly, at least through, 8th grade. So by the time I was 14, man, I was a mess. I already had, depression. I already had anxiety. I was already using food to anesthetize myself. I mean, I was in rough shape, but there was kind of like a tipping point there, Dave, where I went from the person who had been hurt to the person who did the hurting, And so I kind of went on a, for lack of a better terminology, went on like a 40-year spree of ruining relationships. And, I've blown through well over $5 million in my life. I was unfaithful to my wife several times. And because I had such issues with money, I got into real estate investing to try and make money. And unfortunately, the person I aligned myself with was doing some things that weren't so good. And I just looked the other way on things. I didn't really dig too deeply. And as a result of that, I spent a year in federal prison on mail fraud. And so, really, really, really bad, crazy time for most of my life. I mean, I lived the majority of my life in fear and just made a lot of bad choices. And then in 2014, when I got out of prison, I met somebody, really didn't work on anything in prison other than losing a bunch of weight. So I came out, I was still addicted to sex, pornography, still food, still money, still addicted to all those things. And so badly wanted to be loved. And so I met a woman and I dated her for 4.5 years, asked her to marry me. She said yes. She took an engagement ring from me, which she subsequently stole from me. And then, about I don't know, 4.5 years later, she wouldn't move down here to be with me. And I was like, I just can't do this with you anymore. And then I found out from her sister 3 days later that she had been married the entire time we were together. She lived in another state, so it made it easy for her to do that. And a month later, I was like, I decided I was going to take my own life. And it just, my dad died when I was 23. And I remember how hard it was. And I was having a conversation with God. And he's like, remember how bad it was for your dad? Well, you got 4 kids. You really can't do that to them. And so I went on a huge, huge journey of self-discovery and really started working through all the things I hadn't worked through. And, now that I've worked through almost all those things, last several years, I've been really helping people identify what is keeping them from being successful and what's keeping them from living the life and having the business that they want, so they can get clearer of those things, so they can create great lives for themselves and their families and build a business that'll take care of them forever.
Do you think it's for most people that might be a really wild story, and a lot of people, everybody's got their own shit. Everybody goes through their own shit. Everybody's got their own shit, and obviously, yours is probably a little bit more than most. And the reason I ask this question every week of my guests, even if they've been on a couple of times, is I want people to understand that people come from all different kinds of backgrounds, and everybody's got their own shit. So it's important for people to see where you come from, where you are, and now that you're in a process of building something, and the way I look at building is, I want to get to here. Then as I get close to there, I want to get to here, and I want to keep moving. And personally, that has been probably one of my roadblocks is if I get somewhere, it stops me. And actually reaching a goal for me was always a bad thing, right? Because it always set me back. So that is your personal past and everything has propelled you to where you are. Talk to me about your business path and how it all intertwined.
Yeah, sure. I just want to not clarify. I just want to make it just make a quick statement here. Like, it's important for people to realize that just because your childhood wasn't a train wreck like mine, that doesn't mean that what happened to you was not significant. It doesn't mean what happened to you was not impactful. Okay.
Exactly.
I mean, I've worked with people who literally, got made fun of for being fat one day, and it triggered their flight instinct, their freeze or flight instinct, and they just built on it for the rest of their life. And they got to this point where they're unable to do certain things because of that fear of rejection, that need for approval. So if you're sitting here, you're watching this, you're listening to this, or even if it's live or later, realize that comparison is the thief of joy, but it's also the thief of healing. Because if you don't think you're going to be able to, do for yourself what I've been able to do for myself, and I've been able to do it for other people, then you're not even going to try, just because mine wasn't so bad, and it's just it's not fair to you. As far as my business path is concerned, so I'm the black sheep of my family, and I think part of it has to do with being sexually abused and how it impacted me. For me, I really believe, after talking with tons of experts and doing my work myself, that the gregarious, outgoing personality that I show most people was really created to protect myself from the fear and shame and everything. I grew up with a lot of guilt and shame, and I think that my personality, as it grew, as it's grown, not so much now, but was just I wanted to hide from the shame and guilt that I felt,
Right.
And I'm going to get to the answer to your question, but I'm feeling guilt, I'm feeling shame every day. I'm overweight as a child, low self-esteem, low self-worth, very strong need for approval, and so underneath, all these addictions are growing, and I'm horrible, but on the outside, you wouldn't have known that. I mean, I graduated like the top 18% of my high school class. I was the New Hampshire Defensive Player of the Year my senior year for football. I was the outstanding lineman of the year for the high school. I went to the number 13 liberal arts college in the country. I lettered 4 years of football, 2 years in track, was making $100,000 a year by the time I was 28, got married, had 4 kids, was on The Biggest Loser, lost 116 pounds. Like, if you're looking at my life, my first year in real estate, I sold 72 houses like in 14 months. If you're looking at my life from the outside, like, wow, that's amazing. That's a great life. But I hated every minute of it. It got worse and worse and worse for me, But, so I always achieved. And, I remember back in 98, I got into the real estate business, and because I was sick of working in corporate America, and one of my best friends at the time, her husband was a successful agent and ended up becoming a mentor. And I got into real estate. I loved it, made really good money, then had the opportunity to help manage and train, help build the office to over 400 transactions a year. And, been coaching since 01, started doing it full time in 06. And, I've worked with, fortunately, some of the top real estate agents and teams in the country. And I've spent the last 22 years, learning about coaching, and this since you're self-employed, it's really hard to separate your life and your business when you own your own business, right? Especially when your business is real estate and a lot of people these days work from home. It's really hard to differentiate it. So I've been able to help people from a life perspective as well as a business perspective. And, after I went through this period of self-discovery and because, the interesting thing, Dave, I would have clients and we put a plan together and I say, okay, it's time to prospect. And they're like, I don't prospect. I mean, what do you don't prospect? I don't get on the phone. I'm afraid of the phone. I'm saying, well, if you don't prospect, your business isn't going to grow quickly, or maybe even at all. And I could not figure out for the life of me how to get people to overcome sales call reluctance. So I was like, I used to say there's only 2 things I can't help you do, which is I can't help you get on the phone and I can't help you be hungry. I've since learned that I can definitely help you get on the phone, but I still can't help you be hungry. Right? The one thing no coach can do for you is help you reach down deep to find what's going to propel you to be hungry. I can give you some hints. I can give you some tricks, some things to think about, but that why is on you.
So Wally, I mean, is it imperative for you as a coach, for me as a coach, to know the why? I mean, let's look at this.
My why or their why?
Their why, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so we can't make them be hungry. And I always say to agents I'm coaching and agents on my team and downline, I can't want it more than you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been guilty of that my whole career because
Yeah.
I always wanted it more than they did. They'd come in and be all gung ho, and we go through a session and then they don't do shit after that.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, knowing their why, how do you go into, and what would you do to understand what their why really is?
Well, great question. And actually, part of my Trigger Sales System program, part of that program is teaching people how to find their why. I'm going to share a story, very personal story with you, but I think it really illustrates what I'm talking about here. When you go to federal prison, hard on your family. I had 4 kids. At the time, they were 13, 12, 9 and 6, 9 and 7. And I didn't see them for a year. My ex-wife was pissed at me and wouldn't bring them to see me. Obviously, I did that to myself. But also, we told them that we were getting divorced at the same time. So it was a rough day. And so they all took it really hard. They've all gone through therapy and counseling. Some of them are still working with some things. But my son, being the only son, he took it harder than everybody else and had some really tough times. He was bullied in school. And, he actually at one point, attempted suicide. He was 14. Really hard time, and, that's hard to swallow, accepting responsibility for your kids getting messed up at a young age. And so, but, we worked hard with him. He's in a great place now. And, he's actually going up in New Hampshire visiting family, potentially looking to move up there and get a job working with a family. So we're excited about that. But, I asked him, when I started this company a few years ago, I said, hey, come sit with me, Al. And let's talk about, you working with me. And I said, hey, here's a piece of paper. It's something right with. I want you to write out a list of 10 things for me that you want to accomplish in life or that you want to have. And he had told me that he wanted to own a house on a lake in New Hampshire. He's a big steak fan. He's a big pizza fan. He's talking about going to Peter Luger's. But he sat there for over an hour and he could not come up with one thing. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out, what I'm saying? I'm like, why the heck? You know what I'm saying? And so anyway, I have a Tara Halliday. She's if you want to check her out, she's amazing. She's an imposter syndrome expert that works with C-level people around the world. And we talked for about a half hour. And essentially what we came away with was that, when you have unresolved issues, when you have this fear that you've been avoiding your entire life, when your MO is not looking forward to what you can have, but looking back at what you're trying to avoid, your brain has trouble processing looking forward, right? It's scary, right? It's anxiety ridden. But in addition to that, it also comes down to if you don't have strong self-esteem, if you're forever fighting pain and sadness and anger, depression, whatever, your brain really doesn't get permission to think about what you want in life. And in order to have a strong why, you really got to think about what you want. Now, interestingly enough, and this is kind of Simon Sinek thing from Find Your Why, the 2 main components of a why is that there is pain. Like that pain is the leverage. That's what keeps you going, right? Technically, a good why could make you cry, right? And so, number one is what pain am I trying to avoid, right? For a lot of people, they grew up poor, and they don't want their kids to not have the things that they want their kids to have money, be comfortable, not eat shit food and whatever. But the other half is you got to be willing to change the outcome of something. You've got to contribute something, right? Our children are not a why; they're a who. A car is a what, a house is a what, money's a what, retirement is a when and a what, vacation is a when and a what. You see what I'm saying? So, but if your kids are the what or the who, the why is number one. I am never going to let my children worry about where money's going to come from. I'm not saying that I'm going to make it so easy for them that they don't have to work, because they're always going to have to work. But I want to make sure that my kids are not overwhelmed and consumed with, not having money. I mean, I was making $200,000, $300,000 a year, Dave. I was living paycheck to paycheck. I was in debt. I was just spending money to try and impress people. It was the worst time. The other thing is what are you willing to contribute to make that happen? Okay. So a lot of people are not willing to get on the phone, but really getting on the phone is the gateway to growing your business and scaling it more quickly, right? More people you talk to, faster your business grows. The contribution there is like, I'm going to get on the phone. I'm going to prospect. I'm going to overcome my fear of the phone so that I can make enough money so that I can avoid this pain for myself or my children, right? That's a why, right? Because I know what I have to do. I know what I want. And Simon Sinek calls this is golden circles. He says it's the what, the how, and the why, right? And once you figure out what when you make the decision as to what you're going to do, the how will take care of itself, and then the why is going to be there to push you, right? So people have to start looking at things and saying, okay, what do I want? And part of my class is I clear some of the cobwebs out and get the attic cleaned up of some of these all old, crappy, limiting thoughts, and get them to the point where they can open up their brain and say, okay, this is what I want. Now, why do I want it? And usually it's tied to something that happened when they were a child, usually between the age of being born and 12, that created so much pain for them, or even later on in life, that they don't want to let that pain happen to them or somebody else. And if you look at any successful, majorly successful person on the face of the planet, they face some significant adversity at some point in their life. Look at every personal development expert out there. They all face some significant challenge, trauma, whatever. Okay? And that allowed them to fight and use that as the launching pad, as the leverage, if you will, to make sure that they were never going to not let that happen again.
So one of the things that we started talking about when we first, got introduced was the thing about call reluctance and getting on the phone and why they didn't want to do it. Mm-hmm. But I want to ask you a different question in relation to that before we actually hit call reluctance. And that is, what's the difference between someone that has call reluctance, or what gets someone on the phone that does not have call reluctance? There's a bunch of people out there that have no problem picking up the phone the first time they're making calls. They're few and far between, without question, from my experience. Why are they doing it?
So I suffer from call reluctance for 10 years.
I still do.
Yeah. All right. So so here's the thing. Like call reluctance is basically another word for fear of rejection. Okay. Fear. I mean, 60%, roughly 2 out of every 3 salespeople on the face of the planet in any industry have a very strong need for approval. Okay. It's okay to want to be approved. I mean, that's why tribes. That's I mean, if you're a Christian like I am, even God says He wants us to get together and serve Him and honor and celebrate Him. So, but the whole point is like forever, people have been in tribes, not just for protection, but also to get to know each other and to grow and to support each other, right? So it's okay to want to be liked, to want to be part of something. But when you need to be liked, when you need to be approved of, when your self-esteem and your self-worth are hindering you from doing the things you need to do, that's when it's a problem, right? And so the people who can get on the phone, they don't, for the most part, they don't have that strong need for approval. They're not really worried what other people are thinking about them, or they might, but they're really good at compartmentalizing it, which is possible too, right? I kind of just determined there's kind of 2 types of call reluctance. There's I don't know what to say, when to say it, how to say it. I'm not quite sure what value I add. So I'm a little reluctant to get on the phone because I don't want to screw it up, but I push through. I make my calls. I practice. I'm accountable. Great. The other kind of call reluctance is 100% emotionally driven call reluctance, where something happened that triggered the freeze or flight portion of my fight or flight instinct, and I've spent my entire life reinforcing my avoiding things that could cause me pain, that could scare me, that I think could hurt me. Right? Subconscious is pretty powerful. Pretty powerful. It's really powerful. Does 95% of the work of our brain. But what happens is, and this is what people don't realize, is let's just say, and people don't realize this, but let's just say your parents never fought. They never fought in front of you. They never taught you how to overcome confrontation. They never taught you how to deal with conflict. So you leave it to Beaver House until you leave and start, you start going to school. Then you become an adult and you start getting negative feedback from people. Right. People yell at you, right? It scares the crap out of you because you never learned how to do that. So people whose parents never fought in front of them and never taught them how to deal with conflict, they avoid conflict all day long. They get in marriages and stay in marriages that they probably never should because they're afraid to leave, and they don't like fighting. They don't like rejection. Like, to those people, the word no is like a knife. You know what I'm saying? And so, if your parents fought all the time, that'll do it. If you got beat, if you had sexually abused, emotionally abused, right, physically abused, if you were bullied, if you grew up poor, if your parents got divorced when you were young, or one of your parents was an alcoholic, or any of those things that can trigger that flight or freeze portion of your flight instinct. I mean, your fight or flight instinct. It just starts out like a little seedling, but then our brain's programmed to protect us, right? We have a built-in negativity bias. which is connected to our reticular activator. It's like how animals, see their predators and how to avoid them. You know what I'm saying? We have a negativity bias that keeps us from doing dumb stuff and getting killed, or at least most of us, not all of us, right? But the whole point is we're programmed for negativity. We're programmed to avoid pain, right? And so if your fight or flight instinct, specifically the flight portion, gets triggered early, your brain is going to continually okay, we got to be safe, we got to be safe, we got to be safe. And what happens is because it doesn't know what's real and what's fake, and because it doesn't realize that it's now or 20 years ago from now, as soon as something comes up that triggers that, your brain goes all the way back to those instances. Oh, man, when we hear yelling, when yelling starts happening, we're going to avoid that. We don't want to be near that, so I'm not going to get on the phone where I could get yelled at. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's it. You get bullied, you get rejected. And by the way, rejection isn't just straight up rejection. Rejection is sometimes, I talked to somebody yesterday whose parents, when she didn't eat her dinner, they'd take her in the bathroom, they would dump her food on her head. Or if she would pour too much of A1 sauce, her parents would make her drink the whole bottle. Not only is that, child abuse, but it's also, it's rejection. It's basically your parents saying, hey, you're not good enough. You didn't do a good enough job. Right? A lot of people's parents are strict. And when you come home and you get an A, it's like you were supposed to get the A. And if you don't get the A, you get railroaded, you get screamed at, you get yelled at. Why would I ever pick up the phone where a call could not go well and get, you know what I'm saying? And that's where the connection is.
You just made a connection for me.
I'm telling you, listen, here, this is interesting. Your subconscious remembers everything you've ever tasted, touched, smelled, heard, or seen. Catalogs it all, like a sandwich, usually one on top of the other, right? But it remembers it all, and your subconscious will find anything that you ask it to. And if I'm talking to you and you're listening and you're hearing this, and I'm telling you all these things, your brain's going, whoa, I remember that. And the reason is because it wants you to get it out. It doesn't want to stay in there, right? That's part of the safety mechanism. It wants to clear things up. It wants to get it out, right? And so it's like, okay, here's this. And then you're like, nope, I don't want it. And you push it back and it pushes it down. And okay, here's this. And you keep fighting with your brain, pushing it back and forth. And that's where the anxiety comes from. And that's where the depression comes from, and uncertainty and lack of clarity. And the whole point is why your brain's so busy dealing with all that crap, you can't think about the future. You can't think about what you want. You can't be, positive about the future. And the other thing is it really creates a lot of physical maladies for people, because if your brain's spending all this time working through all this mental and emotional crap, it can't be working on keeping your body healthy. And that's why a lot of people who have issues like this get sick and they have these maladies, because their brain's not available to take care of things. You don't get sleep. There's certain chemicals that your body can only replicate or create more of when you're sleeping, So anyway, I could talk about that portion of it for hours. I'm rambling here. I apologize, but
no, I mean, it's great stuff. So, all right. So now we have an idea of why, right? Mm-hmm. We have an idea of why the call reluctance, the fear of rejection. Mm-hmm. And you brought through what the fear of rejection really is, mm-hmm. right? And I get that. And something hit me that you said that I probably haven't thought about in 30 years, right? So the question is, with the trigger sales system, mm-hmm. you build, I believe what you're doing is, one of the things on your site is you trigger new habits that shoot down your blocks. I've got that right from your site. Mm-hmm. So how are we triggering new habits? Are we learning new habits? Are you teaching new habits? What do you mean by triggering new habits?
See all of the above. So here's the thing. Like, we can't solve a problem unless we know not only what the problem is and identify the source, right? You don't go to the doctor and say, hey, my head hurts, and the doctor says, okay, lay down, we're going to operate. The doctor's going to be like, let's do an x-ray, let's do a CAT scan. What kind of pain is it? How does this feel? How does that feel? So they can find the source and they can solve the problem at the source, right?
Right.
Fair enough. So in order to solve these problems, and by the way, the reason that it's almost impossible to deal with narcissists and sociopaths, and they have such a low cure rate of like 3%, is because in order to heal, you have to agree that there is a problem. And narcissists and sociopaths blame everything on everybody else. They're the victim. And as long as they stay in that victim mode, they're not going to admit that something's wrong. So if you're dealing with narcissists or sociopaths, that's why you can never do anything to help them, because they're not willing to do what they need to do to help themselves. So anyway, we identify what the source of it is, okay? And then T. Harbecker, personal development expert from Canada, wrote The Millionaire Mind. He calls it TFAR, thoughts, feelings, actions, results, right? We get a thought, we get triggered, and there's an emotion that comes up, and then there's a physiological response that comes with every emotion. If we just stop and feel the emotion for a second, we'd know. But most of us skip right over that, and we go right to action or inaction, and then we get a result, and usually that result is not so good. So what happens is we go trigger, thought, skip the emotion, avoidance, trigger, skip the feeling, procrastination, trigger, skip the feeling, perfectionism. Same thing, sex, drugs, alcohol, TV, social media, any sort of avoidance strategy that keeps us from having to deal with that emotion. But if you will just let that emotion come up and learn to deal with it, you can train your brain not to get triggered by those things anymore. Does that make sense? Right? Yeah. Neuroplasticity, your brain is very malleable, not just physically, but theoretically. And so you can rewire your brain. So if I know something triggers me and I know what I feel like when that trigger happens, rather than letting that emotion come in and just wreak havoc like a drunken sailor, you're like, okay, there's that feeling. And for me, I used to force air out of my lungs all the time. I would tighten my back. I would, and one of the things I still do sometimes unconsciously, because I'm still working on certain things, is I'll push my toes into my bottom of my shoes, the floor. I'll tighten my feet until the point where they were burning before. But now, as soon as I feel that physical response, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And I ask myself, my subconscious tells me, it gets me the picture of whatever I need, just like yours did for you. Didn't take that long, right? It was 20, 30 years ago, but I talked for 3 minutes and here it is. So the whole point is as soon as we identify what that physiological response is, we then work on what we call mindfulness, which is really just being present and focusing on what's going on right now. The best thing you can do is do a little box breathing, which is, you breathe in for a 4 count, hold for a 4 count, let out for a 4 count, hold for a 4 count, and just keep doing those things. Does that make sense?
100%.
Okay. And so what happens there is you start chilling yourself and you take yourself out of fight or flight and then put yourself into rest and digest. Can I ask you a question? How well did you sleep last night? Did you sleep well last night?
I did not.
No? Okay. Just wonder.
I did not.
Okay. Just wonder.
Why do you ask that question?
I've been watching people my entire life out of fear of protecting myself. And so I'm looking at people, and as I look at them, I can pick things up about them that they can't even pick up. I don't know why. And I was just looking at you, and and then I'm like, and I was like, So I just, you don't look tired to most people, but to me, you look like you got something on your mind. That's all. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I always have something on my mind. I mean, when I'm listening to you, let me, I'm going to talk to you like an agent, right? Let me talk.
And you're processing too, by the way.
I am.
Your brain's processing. Yeah. So.
Right. So, anyway. so truth be told, I've done 200. This is 270, right?
Yeah.
And I believe
Sorry to put you on the spot, by the way.
What's that?
Sorry to put you on the spot, by the way. Sometimes I can't.
No, because
I can't control my inner voice. I can't control my inner voice.
This is really, really important for people to know. The reason I started doing these broadcasts because I saw someone doing it and he really sucked. I mean, he was doing such a terrible job.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he turned the camera on and say, "Oh, be right with you. Let me get a chair." Or this guy's supposed to come on with me. He's not here yet. So we're just going to wait for a few minutes. Came on drunk one time, was drinking on the air. Look, I don't mind anybody that drinks, anybody that doesn't drink. There's a guy, Andrew Foliato up in Canada, who I think he does
bourbon
and something else, once a week. And that's really pretty cool how he does it. So that's not a problem for me, but I just knew I could do a better job. So I just started doing it. And what I found as I started doing it was that all the experts I've had on, including you, a lot of the questions I have are personal. Plain and simple, coming right out. I have issues that I need to solve, or I'm trying to help agents and I don't know how to do it. So I'm getting opinions. I'm asking, and these are the questions, in my opinion, that a lot of people don't want to ask. They're afraid to ask because they might say, "Oh, I have a stupid question." And of course, everybody thinks it's a stupid question, right? So I've decided that I want to be the dumb guy in the room, because I know if there's 100 people in the room and there's at least 50 people want to ask the same question, right?
I don't disagree with that.
And they won't, right? So I know I have call reluctance, and I get through it by just knowing that I've got to do it. I'll give you another quick little stupid thing. Is
no such thing as stupid things.
There you go, right? So that's what I just said, right? So I love golf, right? So I've been trying to fix my concentration and how I'm hitting the ball, etc. And I realized yesterday, when I played a little bit yesterday, that if I concentrate on the one shot and visualize the one shot, it does exactly what I want it to do, right? And I always have, a visualization part of every call, but I don't do it half the time. My call reluctance is, do I sound like a salesman? That's my reluctance. It sounds like crap what I say, even though I practice and I revise and I try not to sound cheesy or corny. So that's what holds me back, right? I know a lot of other people don't want to be yelled at, or they think they're saying the right thing. And what the problem with most agents, Wally, in my opinion, is that, and I've used this example before, is that because they became a real estate agent, they have watched so many people be so fucking corny and cheesy that they think they've got to do the same thing. And when they start having to do it, they forget that they sound like shit. And when they realize that they sound wrong or sound scripted, they don't want to do it anymore. Their minds were here. They got a license. Their minds came here, right? I work with a great guy by the name of Sekou Pyle, who is linguistically perfect when it comes to these scripts.
Good guy.
He can take a script, a Mike Ferry script, say it, and you would never even know it was a script.
It's because he internalized it.
He's internalized it.
He internalized it.
It's easy. He just comes out with it. He never gets stuck. So one of the things that we teach is, objections are not objections. They're just something to walk around on. Never give them credit. Don't give them credibility. I don't want to pay a commission. You know what? I understand you don't want to pay a commission, but let me ask this question. Where are you going to be moving to when you sell a home? So I jump over the objections, right? So that's how I get over reluctance when it comes to for sale by owners expired.
Yeah.
But my point really is simple, that my core reluctance is not wanting to sound cheesy. So my questions today have a lot to do with what I see in my day-to-day life with the agents I work with every day, and my own call reluctance, right? So is it a matter of knowing what you're going to say when you finally get through, or is it a matter of, I think I sound like shit?
Great question. And thanks for your vulnerability. I appreciate that. It's not a syntax thing. You know what I'm saying? If you go online and Google overcome call reluctance, almost nobody is going to go help you understand where it comes from. They're going to tell you to have a strong why. They're going to tell you to practice. They're going to tell you, know what I'm saying? They're going to tell you all the external tactical things to do, right? It's really simple. Ready? Accept who you are for who you are. Once you accept who you are for where you are, then you don't give a rat's ass what anybody thinks about you or how they think you sound, right? Accept who you are for who you are, right? Mike Reese says, we're like a dog whistle, right? When you blow a dog whistle, only dogs come, cats don't come, cows don't come, right? The people who like us are going to like us, and the people who don't aren't. It's that simple. Yeah. Whoever doesn't like the way you sound doesn't like the way you sound, and there's nothing you can do about it. Right. Next, what I'm saying? There's enough people in the world who don't worry about what you sound like that it's going to matter. But that's you. And it just also comes down to just fear of rejection. That's really what it comes down to, is you don't want to be rejected. And look, and I think it's important, Dave, that I like low self-esteem, low worth, need for approval in one area doesn't mean we need it everywhere. Like you want me to get on the phone and prospect, you want me to coach, train, stand in front of people and talk, no worries. Right. You want me to be a ballerina? I'm like 6'3", 300 pounds, not likely. You want to be a horse jockey? It's not looking good for me. I've got a lot of confidence there, right? So I think the first thing is just to give ourselves a little bit of grace, right? You know what I'm saying? No, I mean, when you weigh close to what the horse weighs, there's no way the horse is letting you on it, and it knows, right? Not even a Clydesdale, I'm being a wise guy, but the whole point is
I get it.
but the whole point is that, like, we've got to get to the point where we accept ourselves, who we are as we are, with everything that's happened. I mean, that's like Brene Brown 101. And if you've never read The Gifts of Imperfection, you have to, because that whole book is helps you realize that you are the way you are today. And that's who you are. And there's really, like, I'm not saying no good, no bad. You are who you are. And the people that like you are going to like you. And the people that don't like you aren't going to like you. And that's okay. I use Brussels sprout as an example.
Who's that? Brussels sprouts.
I use Brussels sprouts. Do you like Brussels sprouts?
No.
Yeah, they're fucking horrible. Pardon me for swearing. They're terrible.
Thank you. I thought so too. Whatever. Oh, I love these Brussels sprouts. Fuck you.
No, they don't. Here's the thing. They're like, oh, well, if you crisp it in oil and throw bacon and onions on it and then brown them and put some maple syrup on them, if you have to do that much of something to make it taste good, then it can't taste that good. Exactly. Right? No way, no. But, like, is it the Brussels sprout or is it us? Some people love them. Some people hate them. It's us. It's not the Brussels sprout. Right? We're all Brussels sprouts, for lack of better terminology. And so whatever you and anybody else has to do to be okay with themselves and realize that we are who we are, and some people are going to accept us and some people aren't, that's fine. Now, speaking to your point about sounding like a salesperson, unfortunately, we sound like salespeople until we do the work to not sound like salespeople.
Right.
Right.
So I'm going to interrupt you right there. Right. So how do we get there? Is that, I mean, the next thing about one of the things you have on your site is transfer your triggers into catalysts for action, but also overcome car reluctance. Is the overcoming having to do with the trigger where you don't sound like a salesman? The
trigger of whatever's making that. If you want to be vulnerable for a minute, we can identify it.
Sure.
I mean, did the kids make fun of you when you were a kid about your accent or how you sounded?
No.
Okay. Would your mom and dad fight?
Yep.
All the time? Most of the time?
Often.
Were the fights bad?
Some.
Yeah. Did you get hit?
Yep.
You get yelled at?
Yep.
Were you bullied?
I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever feel left out or different?
Yep.
At school? Okay. So all of those are all like mental health. They're self-esteem killers, right? That's all they are. Like, your mental health gets hammered, right? You see your parents fight all the time. You know what I'm saying? So you worrying about somebody thinking you sound like a salesperson is really just you giving a reason as to why you don't want to be rejected. But it all ties into the fact that you saw your parents fight, and when altercations and confrontation and conflict happened, it sucked. And when you didn't do a good job, you got the wooden spoon or the belt, or you got yelled at. And then you're at school and you're looking at everybody else. You're like, I'm not like all these kids. You know what I'm saying? And so all of those things combined work to help you avoid things where when something good doesn't happen, you avoided it. And so you saying I'm worried about sounding like a salesperson is other people saying, like, I don't want to bother people. We're saying, it's too early to call. It's too late to call. You know what I'm saying? Like, those are all just, it's the same reason people don't tell you that the price of a house is too high. They say the rooms are too small, the backyard's too small, the carpet needs to, you know what I'm saying? They give you every other reason, but that the price is too high, when really what they should be saying is for what you're offering, it's too much. I'm not willing to pay what you're asking for this house because of X, Y, and Z. So we use these excuses, for lack of better terminology. We come up with these things because we can't necessarily put our finger on the fact that it's why we have the call reluctance, and that it's just really due to a need for approval. And listen, I still have need for approval in certain areas. We all do. But when you go work on it and you get to the point where you're cool with who you are, you accept every aspect of who you are, and you work through that BS that your parents created for you when you were a kid, you're not going to give a rat's ass what you sound like to people. And quite honestly, it's the only time you really care when people hear what you sound like, because you have a fucking podcast with 270 episodes where you talk and they hear what you sound like, and it hasn't stopped you from doing podcasts, right?
No.
Yeah. And you didn't know when you started if people are going to like it or not. The difference is I can see your face. You can interact with me. You can control what you think I perceive about you, which you can't, but your brain's playing that trick on you. But when you get on the phone, oh my God, they can't see me, right? So that's it. And it's that simple. It's not easy. It's a lot of work, but it's that simple.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so every time, and so my excuse was, my excuse was that I liked, I'm not a salesperson. I'm a better writer. I'm better at writing. I'm saying, like, I would write all the time and stuff like that. That was my excuse. You know what I'm saying? We have all these excuses rather than just saying, look, I'm afraid of the phone. And I'm afraid of the phone because I fear rejection. And most of us can't even put our finger on it. You would be shocked at the number of people who, when I tell them where their car reluctance comes from, they're like, it comes from that? I'm like, yeah. But the good news is you can overcome it. Anybody can overcome it.
So how do you overcome what we talked about with me? How do you overcome that?
You take my class. It's a 5-step process. The first one is awareness. Like really, like your brain went and did a little spin around and found that. Yep. We gotta go find out where it came from. Right? Tony Robbins says, hey, listen, it's okay to go ahead and find out what the source is. You just can't stay there. Right? You can't stay mired in it, The second thing is what we talked about earlier is we go from that global awareness to situational awareness. When I go do something I don't like, or when I'm thinking about doing something I like, and that triggers that negative feeling, I got to let that feeling come up. I got to deal with it. I got to become mindful and let it pass. Step 3 is I got to rewire my brain. I got to start saying different things to myself. I got to change my visualization. What am I seeing? What works. We just got to visualize positive things. I'm a big fan. I have all my clients go through Hal Elrod Savers from the Miracle Morning. Silence, meditation, A for affirmations, V for visualization, E for exercise, R for reading, S for scribing, journaling. Right. 10 minutes every day. You're rewiring your brain. You're changing what you say to yourself intentionally, right? And between that and you stopping the emotions that you don't want from coming in and wreaking havoc, you're rewiring your brain to start doing the work for you. Eventually, usually week 3, when I'm working with people, they're like, something that normally triggers me doesn't trigger me. God, I'm sleeping so much better, or this isn't bothering me, That's because you're telling your brain when these things come in, we don't let it bother us because you're working through it. And then we really dig deep and find out, like Daniel Pink talks about drive. He's like, extrinsic and intrinsic motivators like cars, boats, houses. I mean, extrinsic, like outside motivators tend not to work, where intrinsic motivators are better. So he talked about autonomy. What's my life look like when I really want it to be the way it is? Mastery, what do I need to master to make that happen? For everybody who's a salesperson, that's prospecting and overcoming fear. And then the last part is your why. What is your why? What are we going to use to keep fan the fire of excitement and everything to keep you moving forward? And so it works like that.
Wow. Just some really great stuff. Because,
thanks.
I mean, it's basically you just want to, you're going to, it says, I said earlier, transfer your triggers into a catalyst for actions, which you're just going to change the mindset, I guess, right?
It's more than that. It's you got to do the work. Like you got, when the negative crap comes up or the things that scare you come up, you've got to go to battle. You got to be like, okay, I'm not going to let this do this. And I'm going to work on my mindfulness and I'm going to breathe. And then, then you practice some mindfulness and practice meditation. It's like you do prophylactically, even when you don't need it. So you continually teach your brain to go ahead and focus on things other than what hurts or what's bothering you. Like you got to let the pain up. You know what I'm saying? Kristen Neff, she's an expert on self-compassion. She's like, you got to let the suffering come up so you can identify it.
Right.
But then you got to be mindful and you just got to be, okay, you know what? I'm going to let it pass and let it pass. And the more you just let it come up and pass, going forward, when it comes up, your brain's just going to let it pass for you. And eventually it's not even going to come up.
Okay. All right. So
makes sense?
100%. I mean, you've got a couple of things that I'd like to talk about. I mean, we've talked about some great stuff here, and this all goes through it. You've got a book, The 6-Figure Agent. Talk about that, and what's the most important thing about that book? Yeah,
so I co-authored a book called Six-Figure Agent, which is basically it's a book of written by experts around the United States and Canada on what you need to do to make your first 6 figures in real estate. So I co-authored that, and I wrote a chapter on call reluctance.
Okay. Does it work?
Of course it works. All you gotta do is go to my page.
No, the book.
Testimonials. Yeah, it's great. There's lots of good stuff in there.
Okay.
Lots of really solid, amazing coaches and experts there for sure.
So you alluded to take your class. It's a call reluctance class. Talk to me about that, and who really would qualify to take that class, or who should take that class?
I mean, anybody who, how can I explain this? Anybody who is not able to pick up the phone, anybody who is unable to, what's what I'm looking for here? Advance a call. You can't deal with objections, like you hang up on the first one. You have procrastination and perfectionism when it comes to doing things to be successful. I said video camera. Basically, your real estate agent can't get out of your own way. You can't keep a calendar. You're not sticking to your goals. You're not making your phone calls. And you're overwhelmed and you're overcome, and you're not getting what you want. And it's because there's something going on the inside that's messing you up.
One of the things that I there's all these other sayings, so I came up with mine. It's wake up, show up, and level up, right? You've got to wake up first, and waking up is not necessarily having to do with sleeping, right?
Mm-hmm.
Showing up is just like mentally, saying, okay, it's time to do this, what I got to do. And leveling up is really building your business through skill building, et cetera, et cetera. And I think what you're doing is allowing people to make it easier for them to show up. Because I think that's the most difficult thing. People don't show up for an in-person call session.
They're not showing up because they're afraid of being judged and rejected and not liked.
Yeah. So there's the hurdle that comes out where you can't get over that hurdle because to level up, to increase your business and to build a better business because you're not showing up. And that's what your class will help people out with, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So we've got shown on the screen a way to talk with you. What will we do there? It's a way to set up
basically, I just as a thank you to you and the folks that are watching this, anybody who wants to can hop on my my calendar for 30 minutes and I can spend some time with them and help them identify, what it is that's holding them back. And then I'm not going to sell them anything. And if you want to take my class, great. If not, that's okay. But I at least want you to know what it is that's preventing you from being successful.
That's amazing.
Yep. And so, and anybody can hop on my calendar for that. No problem.
And they can always find you in the places there. So,
yeah.
So as we get ready to finalize our conversation for today, you've got triggersalessystems.com and I have been on the site, and I mean, just what is there is enough to intrigue me to want to get involved. And but basically, I mean, everything that you're talking about is we talked the other day, and one of the things that came up is you not only have to do the work, but you got to tell yourself the truth. Can you go a little bit there with that?
Well, I have this presentation I have called Get Radical, and it's about radical honesty, radical transparency, and radical responsibility. Until you're ready to be honest with yourself and identify that there are things that are not working, and then Terry Campbell, grab some time in my calendar, and I'll be happy to help you with that. By the way, Terry Campbell says she's having some trouble with organization. I want to please grab some time. I'll help you with that. But the thing is number one is being radically honest. I'm 2019. I'm 455 pounds. I'm not doing well financially, making a mess. I'm I just ended a toxic relationship with somebody who I almost took my life over. I realized that there were addictions that I've had for 40 plus years that I had done nothing with, and that they were really contributing to my demise. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I had to be honest with myself and say, you know what, dude, this is not working, and you got to fix it. And then there's radical transparency. Like when somebody, you got to talk to the people that and be transparent with them and let them know, hey, listen, I know I haven't done a good job here. I know I haven't done a good job there. And be transparent with people so you can start doing that healing process. And last is radical responsibility. Nothing's going to change until we change. Nothing.
That's excellent. I mean, really, really important stuff.
Yeah.
As we wind down, I got two more things, man.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, okay. So you've answered one of the questions. That's what you have to do, and what would the one thing is to be willing to change. I think that's the most important thing. Mm-hmm. While it sounds very simple, it is extremely complex. I think we'll all agree. Mm-hmm. So, man, I want to thank you so much for being on today and joining this broadcast.
Yep, thank you.
I hope this was valuable to a lot of people out there, and will be valuable as we move along. I have two more things, man. One question, really simple. How do I help you grow your business?
I mean, at the end of the day, if I just needed folks who want to talk about getting some help and are willing to do what's necessary to get the results you want. If you want to be a real estate agent next year, 5 years, 10 years, then you got to make it through the tough times like now. And now more than ever, you got to be having conversations and building relationships with people And if you can't get on the phone, if you can't build content for the internet or whatever, for social media, you're not going to make it. You will get gobbled up.
So just really one quick question to go along with that is how different is it today than it was 5 years ago? In your opinion?
5 years ago, I'm doing the math. Ridiculously harder. You know, I mean, think about it. Like, let's go back to, you know, I mean, and part of it is just the level of the number of agents versus the number of homes sold, right? You know, when we, I'm trying to think here. Back in 2012, we actually had made it to under 1 million realtors. Okay, and we hadn't been under 1 million realtors for a long time.
Right.
And there was still 4.3 million homes for sale. Okay. 2018, we're like 5.5, 5.75. There's still only like 1.3 million realtors. Okay. Now, this year, they're expecting us to sell about 4.5 million homes, and there's still 1.559 million realtors. Right. So, a lot of agents, not a whole lot of pie to go around. Right. Plus, you know, you've got to compete with the truckload. So there's a shortage, and you're competing with, for the number of agents that are there, you're competing with a lot of other agents. And, you know, there are some monsters in the industry, some great agents in the area who all went through the Great Recession and know how to handle a downturn. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's hard. It's hard. And
Yes.
if you do not take the time to call people and talk to them and build relationships with them.
And that's the important part, is to build the relationships. You know, a buddy of mine, Nick, says the difference between contacts and contracts is the R, relationships. Nick Krem.
I love it.
And like, you know, one of the things that the difference between 5 years ago and now is, aside from the number of realtors, there's a few 100,000 more than there were. I think we're going to lose them again, but that's okay. There's a lot of uncertainty out there, and the uncertainty more or less is in here because there's fear. And what I want you to do is think about what we said. This broadcast is brought to you by Real Estate Skill Builder, as well as the Modern Agents. And one of the things that we do is we help you get through that fear. We help you get through to make the calls. I mean, we do it with you. We do it next to you. You know, there's not anybody, I don't think there's any other team, group, coaches that will actually stand next to you physically and help you make the calls. And that's one thing that we do. And that's where we're helping and been successful, where we're getting 1.8 appointments per 2-hour session.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Right.
Real quickly, you know, it's funny because I'm fortunate enough to be on great podcasts like this on a fairly regular basis. And I always get the question, and you asked it in a way, but, you know, what's the difference between a successful agent and an unsuccessful agent? And really what it boils down to is this, that successful agents do the things that unsuccessful agents don't want to do.
Right.
They do the things they need to do to be successful. And most importantly, they push through the fear to make it happen. It's not about not being afraid, because there's plenty of people who have fear. I don't care how successful you are. There's always questions and challenges. And, you know, people think more money means life's easier. No, more money means you have more responsibility. Right. More money means you probably have more lives that are dependent upon you to do a good job for them. Right. And so that fear, you know, you learn how to keep it in check, and you just learn to push through it to get where you need to go.
Yeah. And to give you a pure example of that is a very good friend of mine has a team does about 250, 300 million a year. And his goal through this changing market, or whatever you want to call it, is to keep his 12 employees. That's his goal. Not about making more money. It's about making sure that he takes care of other people. That's his first. All right, man. You know what? We're over time, which is really
appreciate
cool.
it. Thanks for having me, man.
I just want you to make sure that you know that I know that the main reason you came on was to get a hat.
It took an hour and 5 minutes to get it, man. That's a long time, dude.
It is, but
it is worth the wait, though. It is worth the wait.
You really earned this hat. I want to thank everybody for coming on. Next week we have let's see, do I have it here? Yeah, next week we've got a buddy of mine, Matt Allman. I've known Matt for a very long time. He's an expert, genius marketer, as well as a mortgage guy out in the golden state of California. He'll be with us next week. Matt's a great guy. He's going to talk about marketing, talk about mortgage marketing, etc. But for now, guys, I want to wish everybody a happy weekend, happy life. Wally, stay on for a second.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
See you next week with Matt Allman. Hit the video, Nelson.